Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. Our webinar today will be around bridging the gap between development and product. So this will be a Q&A format, giving you guys the opportunity to ask our team questions. I am Andrea. I am your host for today. Or had some technical difficulties here. There we go. All right, that's me. And here with me are our developers, Will and Danielle. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Danielle. I've been with ProdPad for nearly 2 years. I'm a UI developer at ProdPad, and basically I work on all the HTML and CSS you see across the app and the marketing site. I also do the feature prototyping for UX and user testing, as well as leading internal projects here. I recently was part of a dev panel, a Q&A panel at Product Tank, and we thought we'd turn this into a webinar for you guys.
Hi, I'm Will. I'm a JavaScript developer here at ProdPad. I've been here about a year and a half. I've worked on most parts of the app, though I'm mainly focused on the functionality of the UI. I tend to enjoy more of a creative side of development, and I have been leading some of the R&D here at ProdPad.
Cool. So here's what's in the agenda for today. We are going to talk about improving your PM, dev, and QA relationships, how to keep your dev team happy and productive, and how to be a customer-centric team. We will also then open the floor for some Q&A for you guys. But before we do that, we do have some preceded questions that came in, which we thought would be interesting to tackle. So we're going to start with those. But if you guys have questions as we are speaking, please do put them in the questions tab. You should see it on the right side. So drop them in there and we will get to those when we get to the Q&A section. So our first question is, at what stage should developers be brought into ideation?
Well, I'll start with this one. I reckon from the beginning, to be honest. So, part of the process, and if they're involved from the beginning, you'll basically benefit from their expertise, and you'll usually avoid any technical issues down the line.
Yeah, I would agree. So at ProdPad, we play something called the product tree game. Basically, individually, we all take a post-it note and we write down ideas and features that we want to feed into the product. And then as a team, we get together and stick it on a tree. And basically, the roots represent the infrastructure. The trunk represents more current features up into future features further up in the branches. I feel like I'm directly improving the product, and I'm excited to work on it when we get to do stuff like that.
I think what's always overlooked as well, well, not always, some of the time overlooked, is that developers are often very creative as well. So if you bring them in at the beginning, you can take advantage of this, and they'll have a more technical outlook as well, because they've obviously got the understanding of the technology going on. So, and also it's quite an honor to be involved from the beginning. So that would aid motivation in the team, things like that.
Cool. Our next question is, what role could or should developers play in prioritizing dev work?
Okay, so I'll start that. So basically, if I am picking up a bug, we use Trello for bug tracking. I want to know what should take priority over something else. Without prioritization, I think the wrong things could end up being built on your product. Will and I are both big advocates of documentation and functional specs. So I think this also feeds into tickets and prioritizing.
Yeah, I think if they can be involved and help out with that as well. The other thing is open versus closed specs is quite an important one. So if you can have open specs and give them to the developer, then they can be the expert and solve the solution themselves. It's more motivating to be able to solve the problem at hand. Some of the time this isn't like practical, because if you're NASA or someone, you're going to want to have closed specs.
Sorry to interrupt, but what is an open spec and what is a closed spec? Because I have no idea.
Good question. Yeah, no. So a closed spec is obviously when you're basically saying we want you to build exactly this, whereas open spec is like it's more like this is the problem, and we need you to solve it. How are you going to solve it? That's not the best definition.
So, for example, an open spec would be a Gherkin written statement, like given that when I do this, then. Whereas a closed spec would be more like move this button 6 pixels left.
Right. Cool. On to the next question. How do you approach testing? What should be done by you, your peers, separate QA specialists?
Well, I think I'll grab this one. So I'd say that devs often get mistaken to be QA experts as well, because they're at the end of the line, they're the person who built it. That's something that should be taken into account, but they aren't, basically. although they obviously know what they've built. So the responsibility can often fall on their shoulders, and actually it should be more of a sort of team-wide thing. I'd also go back to the spec thing. I think like good specs really aid testing. Like if you've done the work up front, then your specs are really going to like help out at the end, because you can go, this is exactly what we've built. Yeah, I think also bringing the QA in at the beginning of the project will really help with that as well. They can help define better specs. They can also ensure that the specs can be used, they'll be suitable for testing and things like that. I know that I'm basically filling the start of the project with everyone at the moment. That's probably quite expensive, but if you can do that, you can get the QA involved, then you benefit from it.
Yeah, I think it's also really important to have a bug reporting template. And by that, I mean a set of criteria that include things like replicatable steps, browser, operating system screenshots. Basically, if a developer can't replicate something, it's really difficult for us to fix it. And I promise you that if you are giving that complete information to a developer beforehand, they'll be a lot happier. I also think it's worth noting that while other members of the team will be recognized for positive things, developers are often more than not recognized for when there's a problem. So I think it's always really important to thank your developers.
Yeah, that's always good. One other thing I'd add to this is that you kind of got to imagine the waterfall of responsibility in build as well. So the less that happens up front, the more that needs to happen at the end to pick up for that. And often the developers at the end of the line when it comes to build. So if something's not spec'd out very well, or maybe the designer hasn't covered everything, the developer often has to think over those scenarios and try and build that out. And obviously it's never going to be completely perfect, but it's another thing to bear in mind. So, be forgiving if there's a hell of a lot wrong at the end.
It helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I would add, and we've had this discussion in the team before, is that while we are really, really lucky that our developers dog food our own product, you guys use it on a daily basis. Not everyone is actually that lucky. So when it comes to testing and even just reporting bugs, don't assume that your developer knows what you mean.
Yeah.
I think people in support, like myself, or even QA people, they know what it is that we know what we're talking about, but you guys necessarily don't know what we're talking about. And so that is where a lot of friction, I think, tends to happen, is, using the product and building the product are actually two different things.
Definitely. I guess it goes back to the replicatable steps, just making sure they're clear. So a developer can pick it up and be like, okay, I do this, this, and this, and then I get the error.
Exactly. Cool. We have another question. Developers need solid periods of work to solve complex problems. What tips can you share that might help your product person work better with your periods of focus?
Well, if my headphones on, generally in the office, we'll put our headphones on and it means we're focused and we don't want to be interrupted.
Yeah, we do tend to give each other evils if we're being interrupted with your headphones on.
I can confirm.
I think it's always, it's more of a whole team thing that as well. Sometimes, like if you put your headphones on, you almost need to know that you need to respect their quiet time in a way, or even like having like an away from Slack set. It's good to just like at least engage with the fact that they might be concentrating or something like that.
Yeah, I think working from home is always a great possibility. We're lucky here that we can. I know it's not always possible, but like Will said, away from Slack, or having a couple of hours a day where you switch off your emails.
Yeah, flexi time as well.
Oh yeah.
So, some of my best work can be done like midnight, 1 a.m. in the morning. But I don't know if that's because I'm on my own or whether it's just some different.
Whereas I'm literally the opposite, where I'd be much better at like 6 a.m. in the morning than I would be at 1 a.m.
I have ideas at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I just grab my phone and go /remind at Andrea, do this tomorrow. It's the way you want to solve that problem. So I think it's normal to have that light bulb go off. I think the reason it happens is because you're more relaxed.
Yeah. In a bit of a dream state as well.
Exactly. So boom, there's a solution.
I think that if you're constantly breaking a developer's flow, though, you're more likely to be greeted with a super grumpy developer who doesn't want to talk to you.
And I'd also I've actually read in a few places that if an interruption from a developer actually causes them like 10 to 15 minutes to get back into their flow as well. So I don't know how true that is, but sometimes it feels like it.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I understand that as a PM, you don't want to feel like you can't approach a developer. But instead of having loads of questions throughout the day, it's way better if you group them at once. So for example, if you're doing a morning daily stand-up, or just after lunch, or just in a single email. And also on that note, I highly appreciate a bulleted email rather than ramblings of paragraphs. I'm a terrible reader.
Cool. Next question is, have you seen benefits from developers engaging directly with users? How should this be managed?
I'll start this one. So in my role, I do directly talk to users because of the feature prototyping and stuff that I do. It has a massive impact on what we build here at ProdPad. So I'll often create a prototype that Cav and I worked on, and then ask loads of beta testers, and they'll directly give us feedback. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll scrap the feature entirely and not bother trying to put it into the app. But other times we iterate, it's great, it's just a lot better. I also think it's really important to be able to speak to customers when you're debugging really difficult issues. Just that leaving out that middleman sometimes just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I'd almost go, I'd totally agree with all of that, but I would almost go the other way. Sometimes I'm not as confident client facing some of the time, so I sometimes appreciate maybe like a format or something to communicate, but I do really like to have an opportunity to talk to users and stuff, and gives you great pride in your work to know the people that are actually using it.
Yeah, I'd make sure that your developers are happy to talk to clients before you say, hey, we're in a client call.
Yeah,
Fancy talking about this.
I was about to throw you guys a curveball and ask, how do you guys feel about the Slack community that we have?
Oh, wow. I think it's really good. I think it's great that we have that Slack community, and being able to have that direct contact with people is just really easy.
You both are, you're more active. Yeah. Will is a little bit less active, but he does answer questions.
I'm less active, I do like to go around, but I am there, so I'm listening.
Yeah. Cool. We have one more question, or maybe a couple more questions, but the next one is, how much does post-launch feedback matter to you? And this is great because we were just talking about feedback. How does knowing or not knowing, right, the impact of your work affect you?
Well, like Andrea said, the Slack community is amazing for this, but I want to hear that people love what we build, but also if they don't and it's not working for them, we want to make it better. We don't want to be churning out features that nobody's particularly liking or using.
Yeah, nobody wants to be a feedback.
So I think that post-launch feedback is the best thing. I mean, we use our customer feedback portal to get a lot of feedback, as well as the Slack community. But yeah, I think it's great.
I'd kind of agree with all that. I haven't really got anything else that I would say to that. But one thing actually I really enjoy looking, it's really sad, I like enjoying looking at analytical stuff of the app and things like that. Mm-hmm. So seeing where people use it and how they use it and things like that is quite interesting. So
yeah, I'd agree.
Cool, so that was our last question. So we are now going to open up the floor, and we do have a couple questions here. The first is, what if my dev team always has their headphones on? What is the best way to approach them?
That is, yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think short term, direct message them, and if they don't respond and they're blocking you, then you're going to have to approach them basically. I think long term, if it happens a lot, then it's going to cost. Ultimately, it might cost the company money, like having to like being interrupted a lot, things like that. So try and come up with a better way. If you have a lot of questions, of like organising them, as Danielle said earlier, I think about like having specific times in the day to talk and things like that. Ultimately, you do need to talk. You can't be, just on your headphones all the time. So the developer needs to go, right, I need to communicate. Yeah. But yeah, it's a work out system.
I think so, yeah. And everyone's different, but in general, I think it's about improving that relationship and just making sure that, in fact, all your developers might work slightly different as well. So if you just have a chat with them, see what works best for them, I would highly recommend that.
I was going to say what Will and I do, go for a walk and buy them coffee. Bribe them with a treat and it'll be fine. Next question is, to what level do you expect your product management counterpart to understand the technical aspects of what you do?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I think you should, you should really probably be communicating on a more abstract level anyway. So they shouldn't need it. They shouldn't need technical understanding for the developer to talk to them. So if you're working with user stories, Gherkin, something like that anyway, if you can try and communicate in that sort of realm, then you're going to do well. That often takes a bit of skill on the developer's part to stop talking technically and start trying to talk in sort of layman's terms, because we spend all the days talking code and stuff. So
I think I disagree a little bit in that I think it's important that a product manager would have at least some high-level technical understanding. I'm not saying they're expert level. For example, let's take an expert JavaScript developer. you can't start talking about JavaScript and then all of a sudden your product manager is talking Java, that sort of thing. Like, I mean, at a basic level of understanding, I think it's really important, at least. You've got to have a conversation.
Yeah, I agree that I think basic level of understanding of how technology works in general is important, regardless of whether you're a product manager or talking to your marketing person.
That is true.
So there does have to be a minimum level of, you know, you don't want to be talking.
I think it works the same way. Like, you don't want a really technical product manager who's telling your developer how they should be developing something.
Exactly. But just some basic, you know, basic understanding, whether or regardless of the technical abilities of either parties.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Next question is kind of interesting. I don't know if it's related to ProdPad as a company or to ProdPad as a product, but since we use ProdPad for ProdPad, I think it still applies. And that is ProdPad largely focused on PM, engineering, QA interactions, or is there a mechanism for communicating with key stakeholders and executives? I'm going to answer this one in that ProdPad does allow you to have discussions and team collaboration. We are really, really big on that. And since you guys are here, I think it might be a good opportunity for you guys to talk about how you talk to the rest of us within ProdPad, internally, within ProdPad as well, because we did just launch a whole discussion section. And I find that we actually talk more now that we have that. It surfaces those discussions and it makes it easier for us to work together.
Yeah.
It does put us all on the same level, which is quite nice. Essentially, you know, when you're in a discussion like that in ProdPad, it's kind of flat hierarchy, you're all chatting about it at the same time, and it's all visible to all of you, which is quite nice. So.
Yeah, I would totally agree with what was said.
Cool.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think we're pretty lucky in that communication is important for all of us. And I was trying to think the other day if there's anyone in the team I don't work closely with. And I do have conversations with Will, I have conversations with you, I have conversations with Cav. So I think, you know, we're pretty lucky that we all interact with each other quite often, quite a bit. Cool, thanks for that question, Kevin. Next question is, what would be a good way to build in a balance between protecting the dev team from the startup business chaos and at the same time keeping them really involved in the context and the why of what we are and will be doing?
Okay, so let's break that down. What's the first bit?
The first bit is, how do you balance protecting the team from the chaos, but also keeping them involved into the context of what's happening? So how do you not overwhelm your developers?
Yeah, I think, that's interesting in terms of the sort of developer they are. So I quite like to be involved in the chaos bit personally. I like to make sure that at least there's one representative there who is making sure that what's being spec'd and that sort of stuff, and what's being chosen to be built as a feature is doable. It involves the dev team. It isn't just like, oh guys, we're going to just rebuild Google sort of thing without even speaking to a developer. But at the same time, I don't think it's worth having like your entire dev team on board. That would be super overwhelming.
I think it was, also like it's easy to categorize developers as developers, but actually, you've got a point there. Like a lot of developers enjoy and excel in different things too. So Danielle's management skills are really good. I really enjoy.
Thanks,
I really enjoy the creative part, so I love being involved from the start. I love a bit of that chaos as well. And together we're quite good at like picking apart what is actually going to be possible to build in a certain time frame or something like that. So I guess like maybe like try and find out what other abilities and things that your developers enjoy and where they like excel in things that aren't just development, and they might be able to help out a bit more with that. Create a blend between what's planned and what's actually built.
Whereas I think someone like maybe Alesh, now I'm speaking for him, but he would rather we just tell him what needs. He'd rather be like, here's what needs to be done, when, how, that sort of thing.
I was going to say, in relation to that, because Alesh is our team member that is actually in another location. And he's back-end. So as back-end, I don't think he gets as much interaction with their customers. But what's interesting is I think he really appreciates having a feedback channel. So we have a feedback channel where people, whenever a piece of feedback is dropped into ProdPad, it's announced in the feedback channel. And so it allows everyone in the dev team to be able to look at it and have a little bit more of a closer relationship, quote unquote, but at least be exposed to what's happening as opposed to just getting the spec and saying, build this. but they do have a little bit of context as to where this is coming from.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
I'd also say startup, you're going to assume it's quite a small team anyway, so make communication really heavy. Like everyone's talking about everything. It's really nice to be involved, but then also ensure that the developers' workload is manageable and they're not working 14 hours a day.
Or overwhelmed with
Yeah,
multiple Slack channels.
Yeah, exactly. And they've got good specs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cool. I think we really like that question, Carol. I hope I'm saying your name right. I do apologize. And I think we could continue to talk about this, but we're going to move on to the next question, which is, how does the dev team work with product teams to ensure continuous improvement / technical debt items are prioritized and not solely focus on new feature work? So how do you balance fixing stuff versus working on new stuff?
Okay, so
I was going to say that.
you both look at me. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing. So I will be the one prioritizing in a minute. And the best way is that to make sure we're always working on a feature, but at the same time, we're also working on bugs. So we do releases twice a week. And I think that's really important to keep up our cadence in that sense. So whilst one of us might be working, actually more than one of us, on a brand new feature, we're always making sure there's bugs still being fixed.
Yeah.
So at any given time, there's both a feature and bugs are being prioritized.
It's a nice little thing to dip into actually as well. If you're on a big feature, you just need a little bit of a break, take about 2 or 3 hours just to fix a couple of bugs as well, and you can get them out and it feels good to.
Yeah, so on a Friday, for example, I like doing a quick win day where I pick up all the small bugs, and then I'm just like, yeah, nailed 10 things today.
And you make your support team happy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Next question is, how can PMs better communicate with the engineers on their team so they understand priorities and business needs and don't focus too much on things that seem more fun instead?
So the developers don't focus on the fun things.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard because everyone likes to work on the fun things.
Yeah, I mean, the grail is finding what inspires your devs and integrating that into their workload. Really. So, if you give too many closed specs, I think open specs is a good one for that, because that gives them the fun of solving the problem without being told to do exactly this. Ultimately, they're going to know. Hopefully, they're going to know best anyway for solving a certain problem. So as long as you specified exactly what you want from them, they can go and be a bit creative and use their sort of inspiration.
Yeah, I think stuff like I just said about that quick win day on a Friday, that makes me feel like a bit more fun. It breaks up the week. Also stuff like we have done hack days. Like maybe you could do those once every 6 months, or maybe that's not very practical, once a year. And where your devs all get together and work on a fun thing together. It might be a nice way to break it up.
Yeah, definitely. And also both of you, I guess, have to appreciate the work has to be done. Maybe you can put a little bit of R&D time aside so that you can work on other stuff that's going to benefit the company, but is also something that they actually are really interested in.
Yeah, that's good too.
You do quite a bit of that, don't you, Will?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
No, I mean, I take a little bit of time out of work anyway to sort of play about features and things like that. So, and we've actually ended up integrating a few things from that, which is quite cool. So if there's any developers listening, it's always good to create something that you think might benefit the company and then actually sell it to, not sell it, but actually sell the idea. And you might actually end up using work hours to integrate it.
Yeah.
And if you guys check our blog today,
Nice.
I just thought about that. You will see one of Will's hack day projects called Nico.
Yeah, I mean,
and Nico benefits me, so it's great.
He lets you know when he's deployed.
Yeah, so Nico lets me know when things are deployed in the form of a cute little cat light, which adds both happiness and information to my life. So that's great. Cool. Guys, do we have any other questions while we're still here? Please keep them coming. We are still here for more stuff. So the next question is, how do you cope with deadlines? Ooh, that's a nice one. How do you cope with deadlines?
Well, deadlines are always daunting, I guess. The most important thing for me is to check that we've got estimates for our work. Sure, there's room for error, obviously. I always have a little bit of space. And then I like to maybe add some sort of confidence check to every single task. Because if you're highly confident that something's going to take 2 hours, then you can probably rest assured it's going to take 2 hours, maybe slightly longer, slightly shorter. But if it's super complicated, you might not have much confidence in that. So that's an instant red flag. And if you're going to put that into the flow, you need to give like a lot more time and maybe expect to descope it in some way. And obviously be prepared to descope as well. And then I think at the end of the day, communication is key. Check in regularly with everyone, make sure it's all going the right way, and it should go through smoothly.
I know at ProdPad we don't actually have any dates on our roadmap.
I was going to say, how do you deal with dates when you don't have any dates?
But so Will and I both work better to a time frame. I feel like I know what I'm going to do and I have better focus. But I think the fact that we do releases twice a week on a Tuesday and a Thursday always means that we're always pushing towards something, not necessarily, oh, this feature has to be done by this date, which might not work and it's overpromised. But knowing that if we've got that release Tuesday, we've got something to work to. And if we miss it for that release, it's not in the world, we've got the Thursday release.
Cool. Next question. How would you like to see the overlap between design and development managed?
That's good. So here at ProdPad, Kevin works quite closely with the team. I mean, previously when I worked for an agency, we'd use freelance designers. And basically that means they'd come in for the design phase and then they'd be gone, and they wouldn't see that through to the build phase. And more often than not, what they had originally designed wasn't actually what was built. And I think it's really important that a designer is available during your build phase for iterations, for tweaking, and sometimes things that you tweak together. And also the working with a developer means that you just have a better product at the end of the day.
I'd actually I'd say I'd agree with that, and I'd also agree with the inverse, which is get the dev checking the design as it's being designed, so they can validate that it's going to be
Doable.
Yeah, exactly. And they can even like help out in some ways and go, actually we actually do that like this right now in a technical way. So, and the designer can actually be inspired by that and go, oh cool, well I can actually design that like this instead. And again, I keep saying this, but communication is key, I guess. Get them talking.
Cool. On that note, sorry, I was just thinking, I think it's also really good when a designer has at least a little bit of technical knowledge.
Yeah.
If you can't afford to have a developer and designer on a project, if you're a startup or something like that, it just even a little bit of technical knowledge is always good in case a designer comes around with something that's just literally impossible and developer's worst nightmare.
And the inverse as well. I guess developers having an appreciation of design.
Yeah, true.
Always helps. I think at the end of the day, like categorizing like your workforce is almost a bad thing. You should try and encourage people to blend slightly, and then they'll appreciate each other a bit more than what everyone does. So.
Yeah. Cool. More questions coming in. This one's really interesting because we do this a lot. What is the most effective way for your PM to communicate the product vision and roadmap with the team? Well, we've done this several times, you guys. I guess I'll take this one for Simon since he's not here. But we do have, like Danielle said, the product tree meeting. We all get together, we discuss priorities, things that we think should be prioritized. And it gives us all a voice, which is really important. Our CPO will go through the roadmap, present it, talk about why we're working towards certain goals and certain things, which I think is important. And one thing that's become really interesting here is we're all starting to more and more focus on our objectives and our outcomes instead of just, well, now we're doing this and then we're doing that and then we're doing that. But it's definitely part of this communication thing is not just getting your dev team to work on things, but understand why they're working on things, and presenting that roadmap is exactly for that.
And I guess you could talk about how things are prioritized to get to that roadmap. It's not just like Jano going, guys, we're working on this because I want to work on this.
Yeah, exactly.
It's customer feedback that's come into that and all sorts.
Which is why we all get together. The product tree meeting is, marketing has a voice, sales has a voice, development has a voice, support has a voice. Like we all get to be part of that.
Yeah.
And we get to understand the validation behind what we're about to work on.
Yeah, I think that's also really important. And again, communication.
All down to communication, guys. Cool. Another question. What would be good ways, moments, channels, etc., to collect all of those creative ideas and the dev team has jumping around in their heads? Well, Carol, you should use ProdPad. The great thing is you can type #idea on your Slack and you'll get added right away.
It is great, yeah. I mean,
I mean, I would say that, to be honest.
I use ProdPad for my own personal projects as well. And like, I can be on the train or something and just adding ideas to it, and it's a dumping ground, and we can like, go to that and triage and do all that stuff.
That probably shouldn't be a dumping ground. I mean, to be honest, if I'm sitting at my desk or somewhere, I'll often write stuff on Post-it notes, and I'll be like, "Oh, I must send this to ProdPad."
Good old
Great
Post-it
idea.
notes.
Yeah.
I think honestly, just having a place, regardless of whether you use ProdPad or not, I hope you use
Like
ProdPad.
Trello.
Yeah, but just have a place where you have a place where you can have a place to add those things. You know, and then pass them on to the PM team. We're just lucky that we work on a product. So again, we dog food a lot, and it's really great to have that place where you can go add your ideas, and then our CPO will come around and very strategically say, you forgot to write a business case. And then you don't remember what you were talking about, which has happened to me a lot when you add things in a rush.
I think the important thing is that we don't work 100% on like the product stuff. If a developer has suggested an idea that's R&D based, we actually have a way of doing that with that. It goes to the R&D board, and then we'll pick that up as and when we've got set times a week to look at that sort of stuff. So again, their ideas are actually being used, even if they're a bit more fun.
Seth has a great question. I think we will have to move that one to Slack, unless you guys have any thoughts on that, but I don't manage the roadmap. It is, how do you configure ProdPad to be more objective based? Well, our roadmap is objective based, and we are working on some cool stuff, Seth, that I think you might be interested in regarding objectives and roadmaps. So it might be worth you jumping on Slack, and maybe we can get you on a call for the roadmap clinic. But that's a good question, which we will take offline. I think that is it for today, you guys. The team does have to go back to work. We've been here for a good chunk of time. But thank you so much for joining us. This has been fun for me. I hope it was fun for you guys. I was going to say, I hope it was fun for you guys. And for everyone listening, we will be back soon with another webinar in a couple of weeks. And we hope to see you then.
If you've got any more questions, feel free to tweet us or send them to Andrea.
Yep, send them to me. Yeah, ping us on Slack, ping us on Twitter, ping us on email. We are everywhere. All right, see you guys later.
Bye.